Alright guys, out here today at a pond that's hit pretty hard. Pre-spawn, this thing gets hit by like 10 different anglers a day probably. The bass come really shallow in this pond, and the water's super clear, so you can sight cast pretty easily, but the bass here are really smart, so they don't really touch anything, and that's what people don't understand. Got one. All right. Nice little bluegill on the fly. Look at him. He's so pretty. Hang on, let me get him in the sun so you guys can see him. Oh wow, look at him. Nice little red-breasted sunfish on that brown and green clouser fly. He's really pretty. Cool. And oh, hang on, little buddy. Caught him on that Fenwick Eagle, 5'8", or I'm sorry, 8'6", 5 weight. Let's get him in here. Nice little red-breasted sunfish on the fly. Oh wow. Big bass, guys, big bass. Oh, spit it. That was a huge fish. Wow. Ah, that was a 5-pounder easy. Holy crap. Holy crap, the head on that fish was huge. Look at the freaking disturbance this fish made, guys. I hooked up on a huge fish in this pond. Oh man, that bugs me. But wow. Oh, that was freaking amazing. All right, I'm learning my lesson with how to set this drag on this rod. That sucks right there. Alright, like usual, this pond's getting hit by more than one angler at once. But luckily, I was the first person here this morning. And before that gentleman at the far end got here, about 10 minutes before he got here, I hooked up on a fairly big fish, guys. I've caught 4-pounders and 3-pounders out of this pond like nobody's business. I know how to fish it very, very well. And I've never ever caught a fish that big out of this pond before. It probably was one of my biggest fish ever, if not my biggest fish ever. And the only reason I lost that fish is because my drag wasn't set the way it should be. I, at the time, was throwing a Zoom Super Fluke Junior, and it was on my ultralight rod, so the drag was definitely set for 6-pound test. I didn't want it rock solid. I wanted a little bit of room for the fish to be able to take drag. I like hearing the drag, and I like using the drag to my advantage. And because of the drag, ultralight rods can catch fairly big fish if you use them properly. And today I hooked up on that fish right on the first cast with that fluke out in the middle. And so automatically, with a 5'8" rod, I was at a disadvantage. He was out towards the middle, and the drag was set loose for ultralight. So I was already at a disadvantage. I got that fish about halfway in and he spit it, and you know, I knew what was wrong automatically. I knew exactly what I did wrong. I knew exactly what I can do to fix it if I ever catch that fish in the future. And I know, you know, I know why it happened. It's not like, oh, that fish threw it for whatever reason. No, that fish threw it because of this reason. Like, so I'm not upset about what happened. I hooked into a really, really big fish today. The technique that I was using worked. And, you know, I caught a fish on the fly rod. Yeah, it was a little red-breasted sunfish, but that red-breasted sunfish was pretty. And he was on the clouser minnow, so I'm happy. I caught a big, technically I hooked up on a big fish and caught a fish on the fly rod, so, you know, hopefully the footage turned out okay. I'm gonna go home, check it out. That fish had some shoulders, I'm telling you guys. That fish was pretty big. There's a couple fish I know for a fact are my top 3 largest fish that I've ever caught, and that was definitely one of them for sure. I mean, no doubt about it. But these guys right here, these guys are throwing like big topwater buzzbaits and big metal, you know, hard lures in this pond that is crystal clear with all bedding bass, and they're just, look at this, I mean, they're just like chucking it out there, and it just goes to show that over time you do develop into a better angler. And I think I don't know. I don't know, like, I think I've definitely developed into a pretty good angler. Anyway, guys, I've just been sitting here watch these guys try to get bass out of the middle with hard lures and stuff, and like I said, I've fished this pond quite a lot. I know how to fish this pond very well, and I know what works, what doesn't, and these gentlemen don't, that's for sure. But anyway, I have a lot of homework to do, so I'm gonna get going and see how the rest of this day turns out, guys. Nice bluebird sky day here in Texas. Not a cloud in the sky. Perfect spring day. Anyway, I'll catch you guys next time. Tight lines.